Much of it had been cut from murdered women, many never registered as prisoners and packed for shipment. Other consignments had already been sold by the SS to German companies for use in textiles and felt. The people were meant to disappear. Their hair remained as inventory. But Auschwitz was not the beginning of this trade. For centuries, human hair had been worn by kings, preserved by grieving families, and sold by poor women desperate for money. How did part of the human body become a global commodity, and why does it grow more valuable as the person behind it disappears? Human hair became tradable because it possessed an unusual combination of properties. It could be removed quickly without injuring the person, stored for long periods when kept dry, transported across great distances, and transformed without losing its basic structure. Its keratin fibers were strong, flexible, and capable of being sorted, cleaned, dyed, curled, woven, or attached to another surface. Few materials from the human body were so durable or so easy to reuse. Yet hair never became emotionally neutral. A severed lock could still preserve the color, texture, and intimate memory of the person who had grown it. Families kept it as a relic, lovers exchanged it as a promise, and communities treated its cutting as a sign of devotion, mourning, punishment, or disgrace. This tension made hair uniquely valuable. Physically, it behaved like a practical raw material. Culturally, it remained part of a human identity. Commerce would eventually exploit both qualities. Long before hair entered a global market, societies used it as a visible language of belonging. Its length, arrangement, covering, or removal could indicate age, marriage, rank, mourning, religion, or exclusion. In many spiritual traditions, changing the hair marked a change in the self. Buddhist monks and nuns shaved their heads to renounce vanity, while Sikhs preserved uncut hair as a sacred commitment. But the same physical act could carry opposite meanings when imposed by force. Captives, prisoners, enslaved people, and defeated populations were sometimes shorn to humiliate them, standardize their appearance, control hygiene, or sever ties to their former identity. The difference was not the blade, it was consent and power. Hair therefore occupied a strange boundary between the private body and the public world. Before merchants learned to price it by length, color, and texture, rulers and religious authorities had already learned that controlling hair could symbolize control over the person. By the late 17th century, European courts had transformed wigs from practical coverings into public displays of rank. Louis XIV, whose thinning hair encouraged his use of elaborate wigs, made the style inseparable from the spectacle of royal power. After Charles II returned to England in 1660, French-influenced periwigs also spread among aristocrats, officials, and professionals. A large wig required far more hair than one wearer could provide, turning appearance into a supply problem. Wigmakers bought human hair through barbers, merchants, and traveling collectors who visited poorer rural communities. Women's long, untreated hair was especially valued because it could be cleaned, sorted, curled, and dyed. Cheaper wigs might include horsehair or other fibers, but fine human hair commanded higher prices. The transaction appeared voluntary, but poverty shaped the bargain. Wealthy customers displayed their status, while the women who grew the material vanished from the finished product and its profit. In the 19th century, human hair acquired another kind of value. It became a physical bridge between the living and the dead. Before photography became inexpensive and widely available, families often preserved a lock of hair because it could survive long after a face had disappeared from memory. During the Victorian era, artisans wove hair into rings, bracelets, brooches, watch chains, wreaths, and elaborate framed designs. Some pieces marked a death, while others celebrated love, friendship, or family ties. Instruction manuals even taught women how to create hairwork at home, although professional workshops also produced increasingly complex designs. Yet sentiment soon created another market. As professional workshops and commercial suppliers expanded, even this deeply personal form of remembrance became part of a craft economy. What began as an intimate fragment of identity was becoming transferable, manufacturable, and profitable. By the 19th century, the expanding wig, hairpiece, and hairwork trades depended on a supply chain that reached far beyond urban workshops. Traveling hair buyers moved through rural districts of France, Italy, Germany, and Eastern Europe, offering money, clothing, ribbons, or household goods for women's long hair. Collectors judged each bundle by length, color, texture, cleanliness, and whether it had been dyed or damaged. Light shades and long, untreated strands could command higher prices, but the person who grew them rarely shared in the later value. Some women sold willingly for useful cash, others made the choice under pressure from poverty, family need, or employers. Once cut, the hair was bundled with strands from strangers, sorted again, and shipped toward workshops and cities. Its biography disappeared almost immediately. By the time it became a fashionable curl, mourning ornament, or replacement hairpiece, the seller had been reduced to a material category: length, shade, quality, and price. At Auschwitz, Nazi exploitation of human hair was not an extension of ordinary exchange, but an act of total confiscation. Prisoners selected for labor were shorn during admission, a procedure officially justified by hygiene and intended to make escapees easier to recognize. The long hair of many Jewish women murdered in the gas chambers was also removed, then disinfected, dried, packed, and sold through the SS economic system to German companies. It could be processed into felt and haircloth, reducing the last visible trace of an individual to industrial stock. The Nazis did not merely exploit an existing market, they erased the possibility of refusal. Names, clothing, possessions, and hair were taken within the same machinery of dispossession. In ordinary commerce, poverty could distort consent. At Auschwitz, consent no longer existed at all. The 7 tons found after liberation, therefore, represented more than unused material. They revealed the endpoint of a system that had learned to calculate value in everything a victim possessed, even after attempting to destroy the person. After the war, the human hair trade entered a more industrial phase. In the 1960s, South Korea emerged as a major center of wig manufacturing, using factory production and export networks, while sourcing part of its raw hair from its own population. As Korean incomes rose, the industry increasingly turned to China. When rising prosperity changed the Chinese supply as well, collectors moved deeper into Indonesia and became active in Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Mongolia, and Myanmar. Synthetic fibers made inexpensive wigs easier to mass produce, but natural human hair remained the premium material. Industrialization, therefore, did not eliminate the old dependence on inequality. It reorganized it. Manufacturing and export profits could concentrate in factories and commercial centers, while the search for raw hair kept moving toward communities where economic opportunities were fewer. The modern wig became a global product in part because manufacturers could shift sourcing toward regions where economic opportunities remained limited. As demand grew, one of the industry's most visible supply routes emerged from Hindu temples in southern India. Pilgrims arrived to fulfill vows or express devotion by having their heads shaved, usually without treating the act as a commercial sale. Temples collected the discarded hair and auctioned it to licensed buyers, converting a ritual offering into revenue that could support religious and charitable activities. Traders then separated long Remy hair, whose cuticles remained aligned, from shorter or tangled strands. It was cleaned, sorted, processed, and exported to factories and salons around the world. Yet temple hair never explained the entire industry. Researcher Emma Tarlow found that it represented only about 1/5 of the hair supply she investigated. Much more came from direct purchases, salon floors, and strands gathered from combs and households across Asia. The modern trade did not depend on a single source. It depended on blending many origins until almost none could be traced. Once gathered, hair could cross several borders before it reached a customer. A bundle purchased in an Indian village or collected from a Chinese household might be sorted in one region, untangled in another, bleached and dyed elsewhere, then labeled according to texture or marketing category rather than its true origin. Terms such as Brazilian, Peruvian, or European often described a desired look, not a verifiable birthplace. Factories mix strands from different donors, while chemical treatments and silicone coatings concealed differences in quality. At each stage, the product became cleaner, more uniform, and more expensive, but the people who supplied the raw material became harder to identify. This opacity protected profits and made ethical claims difficult to test. A consumer could pay hundreds or even thousands of dollars for extensions without knowing whether the original donor had been fairly compensated, understood where the hair would go, or had consented at all. The enormous price gap between raw hair and finished extensions reveals where power sits within this trade. A woman may receive only a modest payment for hair that took years to grow, while a premium wig made from carefully matched strands can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Some of that increase reflects real labor. Workers must wash, untangle, sort, align, color, and attach thousands of strands, often by hand. Yet value also rises through branding, packaging, celebrity promotion, and salon installation. The donor provides the biological material and the years required to produce it, but companies farther along the chain control processing, marketing, and access to wealthy consumers. Scattered suppliers possess little bargaining power against organized buyers. The industry's central paradox is therefore simple. Hair becomes more valuable as its human origin becomes less visible. By the time it is sold as luxury, confidence, or reinvention, the person who grew it has usually disappeared. Behind the polished product was another largely invisible group, workers who transformed chaotic bundles into uniform hair. In processing centers across Asia, employees separated strands by length, removed gray or damaged fibers, untangled knots, washed away dirt, and arranged cuticles in the same direction. Short hair collected from combs, households, or salon floors required even more labor. Workers repeatedly pulled it through metal hackles, sorted it by hand, and used chemical baths to remove its original pigment before recoloring it for export. These processes turned low-value waste into a desirable product, but weak safety protections could expose workers to repetitive strain, airborne dust, harsh bleaching agents, and poorly ventilated rooms. The finished package might be marketed as effortless beauty, although its consistency depended on hours of meticulous handwork. Consumers saw length, shine, and texture. They rarely saw the hands that created those qualities, or the working conditions concealed behind them. During the 20th century, Black women became one of the most influential consumer groups in the global market for human hair wigs, weaves, and extensions. Yet this demand had no single cause. For some wearers, added hair-supported protective styles that reduced daily manipulation of natural hair. For others, it offered creative expression, convenience, versatility, or a response to hair loss. Although many braiding products were synthetic rather than human hair, both markets developed alongside societies in which Afro-textured hair was often stigmatized in schools, workplaces, and popular culture. Black consumers therefore shaped major beauty trends, but they were not responsible for creating the entire modern hair trade, nor did they all use these products for the same reasons. Much of the sourcing, processing, and distribution remained controlled elsewhere, separating consumer choice from knowledge of the supply chain. personal transformation at one end could still depend on poorly documented donors and invisible workers at the other. In July 2020, the hidden risks of this supply chain appeared at the port of New York, Newark. US Customs and Border Protection detained almost 13 tons of hair products worth more than $800,000 from Lop County Mason Hair Product Company in Xinjiang, China. The agency had found reasonable indications that the goods were produced with forced labor, including prison labor. The detention concerned suspected forced labor in production. It did not establish where the hair itself came from. That distinction mattered because the conditions of manufacturing and the origin of the raw material were both difficult to reconstruct. The case showed that 100% human hair described only the material, not the conditions under which it was collected or processed. Without traceability, beauty products could cross oceans while the people behind them remained hidden. The greatest ethical problem was not always outright theft. It was the broad grey zone between free choice and coercion. A woman facing debt might agree to sell hair because it was one of the few assets she could quickly convert into cash. A child might have hair cut by a parent without understanding where it would go. A devotee could offer hair for religious reasons without realizing that it would later be auctioned into an international beauty market. In other cases, collectors could misrepresent the price, purpose, or final destination. Each transaction might appear legal when viewed alone, yet the imbalance of knowledge and bargaining power remained enormous. Consent, therefore, required more than the absence of physical force. It depended on clear information, a genuine ability to refuse, and fair compensation. When supply chains erased those conditions, the market could transform vulnerability into merchandise while allowing every intermediary to claim ignorance. Building an ethical hair trade requires making the donor visible before the product reaches the salon. A credible system would record each bundle's source, whether it was sold or donated, what the supplier explained, how much the donor received, and every processor that handled it. Keeping different sources separate would make single donor claims verifiable, while independent audits could test whether payments and working conditions matched company promises. Yet these safeguards are expensive, in a business built on mixing thousands of anonymous strands. Small collectors may use cash and keep few records. Exporters may buy through several intermediaries. Bleaching and sorting can erase clues that once distinguished one bundle from another. Traceability also limits companies' ability to relabel hair according to whatever origin consumers value most. Ethical sourcing is therefore possible, but it demands a chain designed to preserve human identity. The existing market became profitable by allowing that identity to disappear. One of the clearest alternatives is the medical wig donation model, in which a donor cuts hair deliberately, receives clear instructions, and sends it to an organization that explains how it will be used. Because the purpose is known from the beginning, the transaction preserves consent rather than hiding it. Donated hair can help create wigs for people experiencing cancer treatment, alopecia, burns, or other forms of hair loss, although not every contribution is suitable. Length, condition, color treatments, manufacturing costs, and the needs of recipients all affect whether a donation can be used. Some programs sell unusable hair or charge for finished wigs to cover processing, so transparency still matters at every stage. The important difference is that the donor enters the chain with knowledge and intent. In this model, hair remains valuable because its human story is preserved, not because that story has been erased. Not every strand of hair needed to become a wig in order to have value. Most salon clippings were too short, mixed, or chemically treated for the beauty trade, and were usually swept into the trash. Environmental organizations began collecting this waste and turning it into felted mats or fiber-filled booms. Because oil clings readily to the surface of hair, these products can help capture leaks around machinery, protect storm drains, and assist with some shoreline or harbor cleanups. They are not a universal replacement for conventional spill response materials. Saturated mats must still be recovered, handled, and disposed of properly, while different emergencies require different tools. Yet the model reverses the traditional logic of the hair industry. Length, color, purity, and the donor's appearance no longer determine value. Material once discarded by salons becomes a locally collected environmental resource, showing that human hair can remain useful without hiding exploitation behind beauty or luxury. These alternatives show that human hair can retain value without erasing the people behind it. Medical donation programs preserve informed intent, while salon recycling networks turn discarded material into a local resource. Yet both remain exceptions within a beauty market built on fragmented supply chains. Reform, therefore, requires more than vague ethical labels. Collectors must explain terms and pay fairly, while manufacturers and retailers must document origins and processing. Independent verification must then test those claims. Such safeguards increase costs, which is precisely why change remains slow. The question is not whether hair should be used, but whether its value can grow without making the person who grew it disappear. In January 1945, the nearly 7 tons of hair found at Auschwitz showed what happened when a state denied human beings every form of ownership, including ownership of their own bodies. Today, hair moves through a different world of temples, village markets, processing factories, medical charities, salons, and online stores. Most modern transactions are not comparable to that crime, and they should never be treated as if they were. Yet the same fundamental question follows every strand. Was it given with knowledge and choice, or did distance allow someone's vulnerability to become another person's profit? Hair can preserve memory, restore dignity, create livelihoods, and even absorb pollution. It can also conceal coercion behind a beautiful finished product. The material itself is neither humane nor cruel. The system around it decides. The next time you see a wig or extension, remember that its history began not in a package, but on a human head. If this hidden history changed how you see hair, subscribe and tell us what everyday material we should investigate next.